Hello, everybody. This is Kiara Windrider, host for Conscious Awakening Network. So, this episode is the fifth reading from Issa, Son of the Sun. Today is Sunday, November the 12th. So, let me just go right into the reading. So, this is chapter 21, Vipassana. Previous episodes are archived on Conscious Awakening Network Live or one of those links. You can also find them on my YouTube channel, Kiara Windrider. So, chapter 21, Vipassana. Come, I will show you a basic practice today, said Ananda to him after he had been in the monastery for some time. This is the crown jewel of enlightenment, known as Vipassana. And our tradition claims that this is the technique the Buddha eventually practiced towards his own enlightenment and what he taught his followers. Vipassana means insight. It is not an insight that comes from the mind, however, but an insight that emerges of itself beyond the mind through a deep understanding that resides within the body. Once we are purified of addictions, desires, and subconscious tendencies, the body is not something to force into submission, for it is a temple of creation. This is why we do not advocate ascetic extremes of any form, but rather a middle path, which focuses on awareness rather than deprivation. It is a silent awareness, which acknowledges the perfection of all things as they are, without the need or desire to change any of it, like watching clouds drift across the open sky of the mind. For it is desire which is the root of judgment, and it is judgment which is the root of suffering. What we wish to achieve is a state of anicca, or equanimity, where all things simply pass through awareness, coming and going as they are, the mind simply observing without getting attached or experiencing aversion to any of these things. For it is this attachment that creates judgment or denial or addiction or fear, and this leads to resistance and suffering. All fears can be traced back to the fear of change, for change represents the great unknown, which is anathema to the fixed mind or the ego. Even the most basic of all fears, the fear of death, is only the fear of change, for what dies except this ego itself? It is a fear of change that numbs and kills the mind, which creates the identity of a separate ego. Anicca is a state of equanimity, where we can welcome change and experience reality exactly as it is, without judgments or preferences imposed by the mind. We see things as they are, rather than how we would like them to be. When we release the mind, we release suffering. When the mind is free, all things are known in their infinite perfection. All phenomena of change and movement find their basis in the changeless quality of the pure mind. This is nirvana. This is the key teaching of our illumined master. Ananda then guided Issa into a meditation practice aimed at developing anicca. He first had him focus his attention on his breath, bringing his entire attention to where the breath entered the nostrils and where it exited. This is the key to developing a strong concentration, said Ananda, for you will need this concentration to go into the realms of Mara, the constantly shifting sands of the subconscious mind, so you can discover the changeless unity of all things, even within the realm of the body itself. Issa welcomed this practice. Much of his time among the Brahmins had been spent learning the Vedas and the Upanishads, learning the rituals of unifying the outer worlds of form with the inner worlds of spirit. But Ananda encouraged him to let go of all ideas and concepts now, go directly into experiencing the wisdom held within the body itself, a cellular intelligence that rested directly within the changeless unity of all things. After some days of developing this heightened concentration, Ananda invited Issa to bring all his attention into the very top of the head. Don't worry about chakras and centers or kundalini flows now. Just experience what is there, not differentiating between pleasurable and painful sensations, gross or subtle, large or small. You'll be going directly into the mind of the body itself, where each cell can be seen as a living universe. And then, slowly, part by part, and piece by piece, he guided Issa's attention through his entire body, from the top of his head to the tip of the toes, and then back again. Just be aware of whatever sensations come up as you speak to your body in awareness. It could be tingling, or prickling, or numbness, heat or cold, expansion or contraction, tightness or pressure or pain. It is not important what sensations you experience, but that you experience it fully and keep moving. Don't stay for too long in any one area. As you continue this practice for long hours, pain and numbing is inevitable, but neither resist these sensations nor get attached to subtle, pleasant sensations as they come up. Eventually, this becomes a training in life, and you learn to walk between pleasure and pain in whatever realm of life you encounter this without attachment to one or aversion to the other. You can practice this with the sensations you experience within your body, and then with your thoughts, with the states of mind and emotions that emerge as a result of these thoughts, and ultimately with all the circumstances of your life and the world around you. While he continued these practices, Issa also studied the Buddhist scriptures, the Dhammapada, and other treasures from the Theravada tradition. He became aware that while there were similarities between the Buddhist and Hindu traditions, there were also great differences. Hindus believed that Jivatman was the eternal essence of our human experience, and that once you experience this, you also experience the infinite Paramatman, or Brahman, which is universal consciousness itself. Freedom was in experiencing yourself as one with the universe. But the Buddhists did not believe in a personal or universal soul, and freedom in their tradition was to become completely detached from the universe. Chapter 22, Wilderness. As Issa pondered these teachings, a great battle began to rage inside him. He had met so many teachers along the way, and they held so many different understandings of truth, of the way, of the light. How is it that so many versions of truth could exist at the same time, with each of the followers equally sincere, each of the followers equally convinced that theirs was the ultimate truth? And how is it possible that each of these traditions was willing to fight with another tradition simply because the truth happened to be different from their own? The Parsis were kind and hospitable people who worshipped the sun and believed in the duality of light and dark, that all life was caught in the balance between Ahura Mazda and Ahriman, God, and the devil, each equally powerful and equally necessary. So, does that mean that we are not responsible for our own actions, that we are simply playthings of whichever force happen to be in control at any given time? The Jains believed in social justice, in the equality of men and women, rich and poor, and honored the sanctity of all life. But there was such a denial of the physical body. If the body was part of the natural order of things, why deny its needs and its functions to such an extreme degree? Was not God also within the physical aspect of our being? And then there were the Brahmins who spoke about the unity of all life in their quest for this unity consciousness, which they called moksha, or enlightenment. If this was the goal of all life, why was the society so divided by the caste system? Were not the Sudras or untouchables equally an aspect of God? Was oneness only to be experienced by a privileged few? The Buddhists likewise spoke so much about liberation and non-attachment, but so many of the Buddhist orders had become pressed down with rules and dogmas, so attached to non-attachment that they had lost the natural spontaneity and joy of simply being alive. What had liberation to do with any of this? The Buddhists had stopped being responsive to the demands of social justice and human need around them, imagining all of this as forms of attachment. Where was the compassion that the Buddha spoke about? The Hindus likewise could turn a blind eye to human misery, justifying all of this as karmic payback. Was this justice? And back home among his own people, he had seen the same smug religiosity of the priestly classes, all except for his aged teacher, Ezra, where acts of piety became more important than compassionate caring for the poor and needy, where commandments were followed to the letter without regard for the essence, where God is defined as a jealous God who supported his chosen ones against the heathen masses. How did this honor God? How did this demonstrate love? A great unease had befallen him as Issa pondered these questions within himself. How could all these teachers of religion not recognize this basic delusion and deny the essential spirit of life? How could they be so awake in some respects and so asleep in others? He recognized that the same conflicts he experienced in these teachers of religion existed also in himself, and this frustrated him even more. He recognized the judgments and denials that he harbored so strongly in his own life, in his own search for truth, and in the intolerance he felt when others did not walk their talk. And what about the love of a woman? Ever since he had been with the Essenes and the Jains, Issa had made a virtue of celibacy and asceticism. But is this what God wanted for him? He remembered Marie of Magadha. How could he reconcile her memory with the path he had chosen for himself? He was trying to go on his own quest now. He also felt it was time to head towards his ancestral home in Kashmir, where he knew his mother, Mariam, awaited him. Bidding goodbye to Ananda and the kind monks in Kapilavastu, where he had remained for 3 years, Issa took to the wilderness of the Himalayan foothills. Chapter 23, Meeting the Master. It had been months since he left Kapilavastu. Issa sought solace in the beauty of the Himalayan valleys, a land crisscrossed with streams and blooming with flowers. His heart delighted in wandering through this paradise on earth, so different from the stark deserts of his own homeland. One day, passing through a region just north of Badrinath, close to the Tibetan border, Issa was wending his way down a sparkling mountain stream known as the Alakananda. Evening had fallen, and the air was turning chilly. He had just climbed down alongside twin waterfalls when he noticed a magnificent cave half hidden behind a nest of craggy rocks. Approaching cautiously, in case there were wild animals sharing the comfort of the cave, he clambered across the rocks in search of shelter for the night. Suddenly, a gentle voice spoke from within. So there you are, my son. I wondered when you would come. Issa was startled. It had been weeks since he had seen a human. Who was this voice that presumed to know him already? A tall, bearded figure with long, matted hair stepped out from within the cave. His eyes were glowing with friendly recognition, and a radiant smile covered his face. He was dressed in a simple white woven garment that covered most of his slender body, leaving arms and legs bare. Issa, Issa, my son, he called out caressingly, as he held his arms out to embrace the young man. You don't know me, but I have followed you in my vision from the moment you took birth. Issa allowed himself to be embraced by this mysterious being. He liked him immediately. He felt strangely familiar, even though he did not remember ever meeting him in his travels. And those eyes, he had seen those eyes often in the periphery of his vision, all through his long journeys. Deep feelings unexpectedly rose within him. Who was this man? How did he know him? Come, eat. Eat first. We will talk later, invited the bearded yogi as he beckoned him into the cave. Issa noted with astonishment that there were two bowls already laid out on a low wooden table in a corner of the little cave, and a pot of lentils laced with aromatic mountain herbs simmering over a low flame. The yogi ladled out some broth for both of them. I am Chaitanath, he introduced himself as they began to eat. I belong to a lineage known as the Nath yogis. I see that you recognize me from your visions. Where has your journey, your search, been taking you? Tell me what is in your heart. What has been disturbing you, Beta, my son? Issa felt this man already knew everything about his travels, his struggles, his fears. The words came easily. He shared with Chaitanya of his travels, of the struggles of his soul and the pain in his heart. He shared the confusion of a seeker who had come seeking answers to age-old questions of life, death, God, and love. The yogi listened in silence as Issa unburdened himself, radiating a quiet, easy presence which was contagious. Issa talked deep into the night, while Chaitanya simply muttered his understanding in sympathetic grunts from time to time. It was good to have somebody who could feel with him, listen, and understand. Issa talked until he felt emptied out and at peace. Tell me, please, he continued after a short silence, why do I feel this way? Why am I so different from others of my kind? Why do I feel so driven to seek for understanding? And why does this understanding continue to elude me? I've traveled so far and filled my head with more knowledge than I ever thought existed in this world. So why is my heart Still so empty. Chaitanya smiled. Your heart is strong, where most men would be satisfied. Your longing drives you on. Most seekers define their search as looking for answers. Often, these questions themselves are flawed. Truth comes not by finding the right answers, but asking the right questions. For there comes a time when the questions themselves must resolve, and you understand all things in the silence of deep emptiness. But I see you haven't yet asked the question that burns most strongly in your heart, in light of Chaitanya, gazing intently at the young Issa. Issa realized this was a turning point in his life. No one in all his young life had ever been able to look so deeply into his soul, and it filled him with comfort and hope. I need to know who I am, he spoke eventually. I've seen God and the devil warring within my soul. There are times when I'm filled inexplicably with a strange light that raises me high into the heavens. And there are times when I feel so small and alone, a stranger in a strange land. You say that you have known me since my birth. Can you tell me, Babaji, who I am and why I am here? It was the first time Issa had used the term Babaji, beloved father, to refer to a teacher. Chaitanya acknowledged this with a nod and a smile. I will tell you what you need to know for now, he said eventually, but the rest you must discover for yourself. There is a tradition amongst these mountains that when a high Lama dies, he reincarnates again in the fullness of time. Those who know him or knew him receive visions and are told where they may go find him again. These incarnations are referred to as tulkus. A little more than 20 years ago, some of the lamas here were told by their oracle that a high lama had been born in a distant country and that they must go find him and eventually bring him back for training. This training was to be very different from the training normally provided to a Buddhist lama. It was prophesied that his life would be a life of seeking and wandering, much like the life of Gautama, the Buddha. And there would come a time when he would achieve his enlightenment and take the message of truth and compassion to this distant country. He stopped. Do you understand, my son, why I tell you these things? Issa became aware of his heart beating quickly within his chest. Blood pounded through his brain, making his vision foggy. Visions of a misty past flashed through his mind. But as he took a few breaths, the fog cleared and his mind became lucid and clear. He remembered stories his mother had told him of the wise men from the East who had been present at his birth, and the gifts they had left for him, and the many questions they had asked. Am I this Lama? He asked uncertainly. He felt a thrill of excitement mixed with a certain amount of dread. What does this mean? If this is who I am, then must I remain in a monastery like the Buddhists? I have no quarrel with their ideals of compassion, justice, and liberation. But I cannot bear the thought of being shut inside four walls, practicing their long rituals. Chaitanya laughed. Yes, my son, and no, you are the one who's prophesied to come, and it is why I have watched over you all these years. But you're not meant to be shut inside any walls, whether walls of stone or walls of the mind. It is why you feel yourself so restless. It is why you have wandered far and wide, seeking for what you don't even know you seek. I will say even more than this, he continued. The prophecy speaks of a bodhisattva who would come 500 years after the Buddha, during a time when the fires of Dhamma have burned low, to revive the spirit of Buddhism in its essence of compassion, liberation, and love. You will do this in your own way and among your own people. There will be difficulties and hardships, but you will succeed. This was all I would say for now. Issa found himself trembling as he listened. Something in him had broken loose with these words. He heard again the voice that had spoken in his head through all these years and recognized it was the same voice that was speaking to him now. Chapter 24. Dissolving. Who do you say I am? Inquired Chaitanya the following day. You are like nobody I've ever known. Issa sighed. Everywhere I've traveled, I've seen those who have been eager for knowledge and eager for the power they could gain from that knowledge. You, Babaji, hold the power of the universe in your hands, yet you're empty of desire and simple as a washerman by the river. Why do you hide in the mountains when you could have the whole world at your feet? The two men sat in silence for a long time. Eventually, Chaitanya spoke. Power is not something that is won by conquest. It can only be gained in alignment with truth. When I say to you that I am the truth and the way, I do not speak of myself in the countenance you see before you. When I say to you that I am the light of the world, it is not this identity of physical form that speaks to you. Who I think I am as a personal self is not important. It is what moves this form and moves through this form that matters. Iskandar the Great came and conquered this land for a time, but it was only that which moved through him that conquered. In himself, he was an empty shell, used by the one source for a greater purpose. Nothing happens without a greater purpose behind the act, and nothing happens before its proper time in the dream of life. We follow the Sanatana Dharma, Chaitanya went on to explain, where all streams converge into a wide river, and all rivers flow into the one true ocean of light. The ocean raises up one person from the depths, and he lives his life in the obscurity of a cave. It raises up another to wander the earth as a Maitreya, who comes here now to this cave so he can ask these questions. It is all the same. We Naths are aware of our unity with this ocean of light, no longer identified with the streams and tributaries of the separate self, no longer identified with the temporal illusions of power generated through the veils of separation. In this lies our freedom. The Buddhists have their teachings and their traditions. So do the Hindus and the Jains, the Parsis and the Yehudis. Each of these traditions is like a mighty river that follows its course through the mountains. But they all fall back into the same ocean. Let yourself dissolve into this ocean My son, then only will you fulfill this thirst that rages through you. You will drink of the waters of life, and life will no longer be hidden from you. Your path has led you to many streams and rivers. You have learned well, and you have allowed yourself to question. Let those questions dissolve now. It is time. Let yourself dissolve. Dissolve into the ocean which has no name. Listening to this great master in the darkness of the cave, it was as if an intense light had exploded in a far corner of Issa's mind. As both men sat still in the firelight, a great thunderstorm swept through the sky of his mind. In the fury of the elements, a still voice began to whisper his presence. I am, I am, I am. It was a light in the darkness, a prelude to the dawn. Chapter 25, Enlightenment. Talk to me of the light, Babaji, said Issa one day. Too often men speak of light as if it was the opposite of darkness, to be achieved by the vanquishment of darkness. This is what the Parsis teach. But does not this give the same power to darkness as contained by light? There are times I've been experiencing my unity with light, and there are times I have fallen back into darkness, left empty and longing for more. Is this light not within me that I can ever lose it? Yes, this light is within you, replied Chaitanya after a pause. But as long as you're seeking for light as the opposite of darkness, you will be left empty and longing. That is the way of the seeker, and it is a necessary step along the journey. But there comes a time when you're no longer resisting the dark. You understand that the dark is not its opposite, simply a dim reflection of light in the density of matter, and that matter itself is evolving towards the unity of Brahman. This, beta, is the true destiny of a Nath yogi, not to experience cosmic consciousness in a realm beyond matter, but to bring this realm into the heart of matter, not just into the experience of a single human body, but into the body of creation itself. Once you experience this, there is no light or darkness, simply the realization that who you are transcends the division of dark and light. This is the realm of unified light, what the ancient ones called Ilahi Nur. It is a light that is above you and beneath you, around you and within you. It permeates all things and embraces all things. It is a light that exists beyond time and beyond space. And it is the light that exists deep in the center of your own heart, your own being. This is a light that casts no shadow, in whose embrace all the darkness of the human heart is healed. When you no longer need to fight against that which you hold as dark in yourself or within the world of form, the battle is won. You realize that this war against darkness was itself an illusion, and you're free. This is the enlightenment Siddhartha spoke about, but which few have understood. The fire had burned low. Fortunate is the one who understands this, Issa, who needs not to resist the flow of life. Then the power of Brahman can flow unimpeded through this one and touch the world with his peace. You are this light, my son. You are this light because light alone is real. All differences and dualities are unified in this light. Nothing exists outside of this light. Knowing this, you become the light of the world. As they meditated together in this awareness, Issa's consciousness expanded far out into the cosmos. He touched and traveled with great beings of light and experienced the purity of their freedom. He touched and traveled with those who had been ravaged by the pain of too much light. The body is broken, longing for wholeness. He touched and traveled with those who ignorantly believed in the darkness as real and felt the excruciating suffering of their misplaced identifications, fears, and beliefs. He saw that he was not separate from any of them, and he saw in the great wheel of life that the human race was destined for much more than they currently believed. He saw a time to come when they would know this, each one, in their own direct experience, when the need for dogmas and religions would fall away in the presence of this realization of the one light. The fire died away into embers, and the embers died away into ashes. Night passed into the first light of dawn. So there we are, chapters 20 to 25 in Issa, Son of the Sun. So let's reflect on some of these themes. Listen to this again if you wish. There's so much in here that can be interpreted in so many ways, and so much of this that can be embodied. But this takes time. It takes time to really understand, not just from a level of mind, but from a level of heart. So we will continue again next week with the next 5 chapters. Meanwhile, both Issa, Son of the Sun, and Miran, Daughter of the Moon, are available on Amazon. So if you wish to get either print copies or Kindle copies for yourself, please feel free to do that. And I also have a third book in the trilogy, Elmira, Child of the Stars, which hasn't found its way into print yet, although it's complete. I do have it as a PDF file, and I'm happy to send it along to anybody who wishes to read this and ruminate about these things. This particular one has more to do with the current transition into an age of light. And it's an archetypal reflection of some of these things in our own daily experience. All right, so thank you for joining me here, and we will see you on the next stage of Gaia podcast. It's every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. on ageofgaia.com at 7:30 Mountain Time. All right, friends, blessings and love.